Okay, I want to talk to you about the information that you have to include and some of the information that you can include in a resume. Uh, of course, the essential information, some of this is very obvious, the information that you absolutely have to include. And so I'm not going to go into a great amount of detail on this just because, as I said, some of it's pretty obvious when you look at what it is. Of course, you have to include your name, and your name needs to be at the top of the page, and it needs to be the largest piece of information on the resume. If you've done the rest of the resume in 12-point font, or you've done the rest of the resume in 11-point font, think about doing your name in, say, 14-point font so that it stands out and the reader's eye is drawn immediately to your name. But always make sure that you put your name at the top of the page so it's the first thing that the reader sees. You also need to make sure that you put an address on there. You can put a physical address, you can put a mailing address, a P.O. box, you can put a current and permanent address. That's entirely up to you, but you need to make sure that it's a good address where you will actually get mail at. So if that means that you put your parents' address on that on your resume, if it means that you get a P.O. box just so that mail from your job search goes to that P.O. box and then you check it at least once a week, whatever you choose to do as far as the address, make sure that you put a valid address on your resume. You need to put a telephone number on there. It can be your cell phone number, it can be a landline. You can put a current phone number, you can put a permanent phone number. That's entirely up to you. But you need to think about the voicemail message that is listed on that, or that you have attached to that phone number. My daughter-in-law, when she was looking for jobs, didn't change her voicemail message. And I called her one day and got her voicemail, and it was, "Hi, you've reached me. You know what to do." And I was like, "Carolyn, that's not very professional." For a little while, just for a little while, dial back your personality, dial back your sense of who you are, and go with something that sounds very professional. Make it something very standard. "Hi, you've reached Leslie Janach. I can't take your message right now, or I can't take your call right now, but if you leave your name, number, and a brief message, I'll call you back just as soon as I can." Keep it very professional, keep it very generic, because you're trying to impress this person who's calling you with the fact that you can be professional, you can be businesslike. This is who you are. This is your representative, and everything about the resume, everything about the phone number, everything about the message that they will call and get whenever they don't get you immediately is saying something about who you might be if they call you in for an interview to find out if you're a good fit for that company. So dial back your personality a little bit and give them just a standard generic business greeting on your voicemail. Make sure you give them an email address, and there too dial back your personality and give them a very standard, very generic, professional email address. In the time that I've been teaching, I've gotten some unique, some very personal email addresses. I've gotten Princess Meg, I've gotten Sexy Aggie Redneck, I've gotten Too Cute for You. This all comes from the fact that Gmail and Yahoo and Hotmail, they need something that is very specific. They need something that is original and unique to the individual email owner. And that's great, but you don't want the person to sit down to write an email to you saying we'd like to interview you, or even worse, sit down to write you an email offering you a job, and they've composed their email and now they're looking at your resume and they've just offered you a job making $40,000 a year, and they sit down to type in your email address and it is hot, sexy redneck or sexy Aggie chick or too cute for you, that's a kiss of death. That's going to be the thing that makes them think, gee, do I really want too cute for you? Or do I really want Princess Meg as the person who is representing my company? Instead, go to Yahoo or go to Gmail and type in different variations of your name, so that you type in L. Janach at Yahoo, or L. Janach 2006, or L. Janach 2015. Type in as many different variations of your name with numbers and your name with years until you get something that is unique, until you get something that will stand out. And give them that email address so that it's unique, it's personal to you, and it's also very professional. You have to give them your education. When I say give them your education, I mean college education only. Don't go back to high school. Don't tell them that you graduated from Conroe High or that you graduated from Bryan High or College Station High. They don't care if you got a GED or if you actually walked across the stage. The fact that you have gone to Blinn College or the fact that you graduated from Texas A&M or Sam Houston means that you got a high school education. So leave off high school. And then you have to give them work experience. The number one thing that employers want to see is work experience. Even if it's just working for McDonald's, they want to see that somebody has trained you to be an employee. So give them work experience. Like I said, even if it's working for McDonald's, somebody has trained you to be an employee. Now there's also optional information, and this is information that can go onto your resume. Job objectives have to be there if you're writing a targeted resume. Please, I would recommend that you not put a job objective on a chronological or a functional resume, just because they have so gone out of favor. You run the risk of boxing yourself in, and because you box yourself in, you eliminate yourself from consideration. Look at the types of resume lecture for reasons why you should not put on a job objective. If you're writing a targeted resume, you have to put one on, but people really don't like seeing those job objectives anymore, so I would caution you against putting one on. Publications or patents, particularly if you have published something in your field, you publish something that's not, say, in the latest Star Trek fanzine. Let's say you helped a professor conduct research, and that professor actually put your name on the publication that grew out of that research. I would put that publication on. If you have patented a product, I would put that on, because it says that you have managed to work your way through the government patent office, which is no easy feat. References can be placed on your resume. You want to think about using up the entire page. So if you realize that you have 4 inches of white space at the bottom of your resume, think about putting on references. If you are going to put on references, you need to give you need to give 3 references. They can be employers, they can be professors, they can be people in your community who know you. They should not be family members. And you want to present the information the way you would if you were addressing an envelope. So you will present name, job name, title, in other words, is this a professor, is this an employer, address, phone number, email, and you will present it as though you were actually addressing an envelope. And you would present that information in 3 columns. So you would give the information for one person as if you had addressed an envelope, and then next to it the information for a second person, and right next to it the information for a third person. Volunteer work. If you have not held a job, volunteer work works the same as employment because you have been trained to work by doing volunteer work. GPA or test scores can be put on your resume, but in the real world, having a 4.0 GPA, if you're applying for a job, isn't that important. Now, if you're applying for an internship, yes, they want to see your GPA, but in the real world, if you're applying for a job, your GPA isn't as important as the other things you have done. So GPA test scores may not be that important if you're applying for a job. If you're applying for an internship, it's definitely important. Civil service ranking or military status can be put on, particularly if it involved a security clearance. More and more companies are doing background checks on employees. They're doing lie detector tests. They're doing drug screenings. If you have a civil service ranking or a security clearance with your military status, that means the government has already done that background check on you, and the company might not have to. Honors, awards, activities, offices that you might have held, that can be placed on your resume as long as those are honors and awards and activities from college. Once again, you're talking about if you need to fill up that one page. If this is going to take you over onto a second page, this is something I would leave off. Hobbies or interests, sports you might have played, can be put on, but with a caveat. If you are applying for a job, let's say as a designer at Nike, or any type of job, say at Nike, marketing at Nike, or web design at Nike, and you were captain of the intramural basketball team at A&M, then it might be worth it to put on the fact that you were captain of the intramural basketball team when you're applying for a job in web design or design period at Nike, because it says that you're athletic, it says that you're involved in sports, and you're applying for a job at Nike, and they are all about athletic shoes. I personally do cross stitch. If I'm applying for a job as a technical writer or web design at Nike, they really don't care that I'm involved in cross stitch and I know the difference between treme and petit point. That's not the thing that they're into. Now, if I'm applying for a job at McCall's Cross Stitch and Country Crafts, they're going to be interested in knowing that I know the difference between petit point and treme. They're not going to care whether or not I ever played on the intramural basketball team at Texas A&M, which I didn't. But you have to think about who you're applying to. You have to think about the kinds of jobs you're going up for before you start thinking about putting on your hobbies and your sports interests. And travels, languages, citizenship. If you have traveled extensively in a non-English speaking country, let's say you spent 6 months traveling throughout Russia, or 6 months traveling throughout Argentina and South America and Central America. If you have dual citizenship with another country. I actually had students once who had dual citizenship with America and Germany. That matters because it means that they can travel easily in another country. If you are fluent in another language, if you're fluent in Spanish, and by fluent I mean more than just the 2 years of high school Spanish that you took, you are able to speak with somebody as though you are a native speaker. That is valuable because it means that you could be put to use in a foreign office. You'd be able to communicate with people in another country. Those are valuable skills that it's difficult to learn. So that is something you could consider putting on your resume. Now, there are things that you absolutely never want to include. There are things that if you put them on your resume may be thrown away just because people don't want to see this. Don't give them marital status. Don't give them physical characteristics. Don't tell them that you're 40. Don't tell them that you're 5'9" and you have blonde hair and blue eyes. There's no reason to put this kind of information on your resume. And companies may throw your resume away just so that they can avoid being accused of discrimination. They'll tell you that they never received your resume. Don't tell them your health characteristics. Don't tell them your race, your nationality, your religion. Don't tell them you're Baptist. Don't tell them this information. It doesn't belong on a resume. It's totally improper. Don't tell them that you own your own home, or don't tell them that you're leasing. If you get into a job interview and they want to know whether or not you can relocate, then you can bring this up, but it does not belong on your resume. Definitely don't give them your social security number. If they want to do a background check, then they can ask for it, but it doesn't belong on your resume. Don't give them personality traits. Don't tell them that you are hardworking and eager. That's the kind of thing that does not mean anything. Prove to them that you are hardworking and eager by showing them the results of your hard work, by showing them how you are eager, how it showed up in your last job. Simply telling them that you're hardworking and eager, simply telling them that you're a self-starter really doesn't mean anything. You have to provide them with quantifiable proof. Don't give them family background. These are all things that will actually cause them to lose your resume so that they don't wind up with that potential EEOC discrimination lawsuit. So this is the kind of thing that spells the kiss of death for your resume. Now, there are some things that I want to talk about, some of the common mistakes that get made. They're innocent mistakes, but they still need to be avoided anyway. One of those common mistakes is writing a resume that's too long. As a recent college graduate, your resume should be 1 page long. If you're older, if you're in your 30s, you've gone back to college after working for a while, then you can have a resume that goes on to a 2nd page. But if you're a brand new college graduate, your resume should be 1 page long and 1 page only. If you're older and you've gone back to college, then think about going on to a 2nd page. Make sure that you're using 12-point Times New Roman, and make sure that when you go onto that 2nd page that there's a good reason for the information on that 2nd page. Make sure that your resume is organized well. Group everything that would be considered education in an education block. Even if it's education that you received on the job, still place it under education. It may be education that was given to you by your work, by your employer, but it's still education, and therefore it belongs under the education block. It should be placed under education. It needs to look professional, and so that means that it's printed on cotton bond paper. When you're giving out hard copy resumes, it should all be done on cotton bond paper. It should all be beautifully, not smudged, beautifully printed. It should either be on bright white or cream colored paper. It should be done in a serif font, so something like Times New Roman. If it's submitted electronically, it should be done in Arial. You need to have a good balance of white space with the text so that it's not cramped. It doesn't look like you've tried to cram too much information onto the page. Shouldn't be overwritten. The resume is the one time when you should write phrases instead of complete sentences. At no time should you say, while I was there, I was responsible for. Instead, you start off with the verb and say, managed, organized, wrote. But every phrase will start with the verb. It will be assumed that you're talking about yourself, and you'll be saying, I managed. And therefore, you just get rid of the nouns and the pronouns, and you'll just say, managed, wrote. And you'll write a series of sentence fragments. At the same time, you don't want it to be underwritten. If you don't actually say what you did while you were at these specific jobs, nobody else is going to say it for you. So you have to do more than just give the company name and the job title. You give company name, job title, you give place that the company was located, you give the dates that you worked there, and then you give your specific job duties. So you're giving the right amount of information, and you're not giving too much language. You're not taking up too much space on that page with unnecessary verbiage. Make sure that you're on target. There's going to be a list of required experience whenever you're applying for a job. They will give you the required experience, and then they'll give you the preferred experience. When you go to apply for a job, make sure that you have every single one of the requirements they're looking for. If they require that you have a bachelor's degree in a specific field, and they require that you have 3 years of experience, there's no point in applying for that job if you don't have a bachelor's degree in that field and 3 years of experience. Because if you do, you're missing the target. You're basically wasting your time in applying for that job, and also wasting the employer's time in reading your resume, because you've missed your target. You don't have the necessary skills and the necessary experience to be qualified for that job. Don't give them irrelevant information. Don't tell them that you're 5'9". Don't tell them that you have red hair. Don't tell them you have blue eyes. Don't tell them that your family is from Georgia. Don't tell them all of this irrelevant information that has nothing to do with the job and has nothing to do with your qualifications for the job. Make sure that your resume is proofread and edited. It should be perfect. This is evidence of your worth as an employee. You are never better as an employee than you are right now when you are writing this resume and this letter of application. So if the person that you present on paper is sloppy because the resume isn't proofread, or the resume has misspelled words on it, if the person on this resume is sloppy and not 100% perfect, then what will you be like once you're hired? What will you be like once you've gone through your 6-week probationary period, when you can be fired for cause because they don't like the tie you're wearing? This is you at your absolute best, and it needs to look like you are at your absolute best. So this should be proofread, it should be edited, it should be 100% perfect, 100% pristine. If that means that you have to find somebody to help you proofread and edit your resume, you find somebody to help you proofread and edit your resume. If it means that you need to hire a professional editor and pay that person $50 an hour to help you with your resume, you hire a professional proofreader and editor and pay them $50 an hour. If it means that you wind up getting a job that pays you $40,000 a year, that's a pretty good return on the investment. Don't go too fancy. Leave off fancy scripts. Don't put pictures on your resume. Make sure that it is plain and simple and easy to read. And make sure that you send it to the right person. If you think that you're going to send this to the president of the company, and the president of the company will be so impressed by your resume that he or she will actually get up and walk your resume down to the Human Resources Department and say, hire this person, that's not going to happen. If you send it to the president of the company will look at it and say, why did I get this resume? Why did it come to me? Why didn't they send it to the right person? And chances are your resume will be thrown away. Figure out who the resume should be sent to. You will always be given a name, or you will always be given a department to send it to. And make sure that you then send it to that right person or that right department so that it can then be directed to the person who actually has the authority to hire for that particular position. That way you actually get your resume in the right amount of time. You get your resume in by the deadline so that your resume can be considered. So make sure that you're not making any of these 10 common mistakes.